second go around. Did not go live the first time. But
it's week 0. It's okay.
Yeah. First show we've done in quite a while. So getting back in the swing of things. But happy to be back for some college football. First slate of the year. Week 0, as they call it, kind of the ease into the season. A lot of big favorites today as you get some of the FBS teams playing FCS schools. So just one of those things. We get this a lot early in the year, and it somewhat becomes guesswork on top of guesswork when you've got new players, new schemes, new coaches, on top of blowouts probably expected to see how long people are going to play. But we're going to do our best. It's going to be a fun intro to the year, and we'll hop in next week with probably multiple slates over Labor Day weekend. I think Thursday's slate is already up. It's going to be very similar to this one. And then you've got, as we get in through the weekend, you'll get the bigger teams, some big games next weekend, as you get sometimes in the opening of the season. So as always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in chat. If you've not joined us over at Patreon, $10 if you just want to dip into college football for the first month. $20 for all sports. We're covering tons and tons of different sports and all slates, soccer, college football, NFL will be back. We've already touched on some preseason, things like that. We've got baseball still going on every single day. Been crushing that over here. So tons of sports that we have to cover. So feel free to join us over there and hop in our Discord chat, and we've got you covered in pretty much anything that you could want. NASCAR tonight, had Xfinity late last night, and now could potentially see the same thing if we see some storms down in Daytona.
Yeah.
That will be a fun one tonight.
Rain in Florida, weird.
Yeah, I feel like every time we go down there, you get some rain. So what we're going to do, kind of structure here, is I'm going to go through the odds, kind of share my screen on the sheet as we normally do, touch on each game, and then we're going to kind of bounce things back and forth off of each other, talk about plays, game theory on a slate like this, as it looks like there are going to be a couple of spots that everybody's going to be gravitating towards, which you sometimes get in college football, especially with these massive totals that you sometimes have. So I'm going to share my screen here.
Before you get going here, I'm just going to let everyone know, we'll just preface right from the start, that I pretty much know jack shit about college football, especially right now. Been working about, 4 or 5 days a week, 19 hours a day, helping my dad out with some harvest stuff. So I'm a little bit behind on the college football stuff to start the season. Dane is the guy that you want to rely on. I've actually just posted a free trial to our Discord. You can get in, you can grab our college football sheet this week for free. All you got to do is jump into our Discord, and our college football channel in our Discord is open to everyone. If you go in there, you will find Dane posts a weekly schedule of all the slates for college football, does the same for soccer, does the same for tennis. And then right below each of those slates, you will see the link to the sheet. That is pinned to the top of the channel. And like I said, it's free for this week, going into next week. So make sure to go check that out and hit Dane up either in the college football chat, in the all members chat, or in DM with any questions that you have, any suggestions. You can hit me up as well if you got suggestions on things maybe we could add to the sheet. We're always looking to add more and more stuff to the sheets and stuff like that. So make sure to do that. So without further ado, let's let Dane jump in here, and I'm going to let him kind of go over, because I do have some questions, but I'm going to let him start things off, and then I'm going to dive in and ask him a bunch of newbie questions.
Yeah, so as you can see, got the sheet up here. This is what you're going to get each and every week. As FCS teams filter out, we'll get points per game, team ranks for those teams. You can see some blanks there. Those are just FCS teams that don't filter in. I did go back for those teams in last year, see how much they threw or ran. As you can see on the team pass percentage, Austin Peay threw it 50% of the time and rushed it 50% of the time almost. And then you've got the couple other squads down there, Duquesne and Idaho State. So Going to be a fun slate today as we try to guess through which of these teams is going to keep their starters in for longest. But the first one's going to be the one that everybody, I think, is gravitating towards, and that's Austin Peay at Western Kentucky. 27.5-point spread for Western Kentucky. As some of you all know, we probably get some following sorry, I was reading the chat. Get some following of NFL a little more as well. You may know Bailey Zapp or Zappy came from Western Kentucky last year, so he is out of the program now to the NFL, and he's going to be replaced by Austin Reed. It's more of a system thing for him. I've not got to watch him, of course, but 9,000. He's going to throw it a ton. These are his stats from the junior college, I think, that he was at last year. I went ahead and filtered those in just so we could see, what he does well as far as if he rushes at all. Does have 4 rushing touchdowns last year. All of these stats are going to be from last year right now. Going into next, or probably not next week, but the following week, we will have up year-to-date stats on there. So Austin Reed, going to be one of the, if not the most popular quarterback on the slate today. And we'll go position by position and talk about their pass catchers because I think there's a lot of interesting things that you can do with them. Second game of the slate is going to be Nebraska Northwestern. Nebraska's 11-point favorite in a 51.5 total. Western Kentucky, back to the last game, had a 64.5 total as a massive favorite. 46 implied points, second highest on the slate. So just wanted to touch on that. That's kind of why everybody's going to be gravitating towards him. Yeah, Austin Peay definitely is going to throw it a ton. We'll get into it, but I'm not touching their running backs. Just kind of going off of last year and what they did. There's so many. There may be 5 or 6 pass catchers that are viable, especially in this first week of the year when they're trying to replace some guys that left from last year. I think it was Stearns, and I can't remember the name of the other guy that was up there that was kind of the 2 lead receivers for them last year that had massive seasons stat-wise. So they're going to be replacing a lot of guys, so there's a lot of options, but we'll get into that. 51.5 total with Nebraska. Maybe a little bit of a new look for them this year as well with the new offensive coaching staff. We'll see what they can do. Open up with Northwestern, who, struggles quite a bit last year. I think this is one of the games that Nebraska can win this year, 31 implied points. Still, not a place. They get the transfer in from Texas, Casey Thompson. Marcus Washington transferred in from Texas as well. So they may have kind of a combo that we can look toward there when we get into stacking. But I definitely expect that this is going to be a Nebraska that comes out. It's in Dublin. Travel game for this one, going overseas. We'll see who travels best over there, but I definitely think
the only way is up for Nebraska.
Yeah, kind of the only way is up. And I think with this new quarterback that I think can throw a little better than what they had last year. No, it's in Dublin, Ireland. It's not in Ohio. I'm almost 100% sure on that. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting start to the year for them. Going on to the next one, you've got UNLV, Idaho State. UNLV also struggled last year, but they get one of the worst FCS teams out there, which is very tough to say. A lot of these teams, when you get FBS going up against FCS, you get some of the mid-pack to top teams in the FCS playing against. But this Idaho State team is projected to be one of the worst in their conference this year. They get UNLV, who is not very good in themselves, but going up against this competition, I think you have to have some interest in them. 24-point favorites, 49.5 total. We'll talk about their QB situation. That would kind of be the only way that I'm even tempted to play their passing game is if Harrison Bailey ends up starting, transfer from Tennessee, he's like 4,500 min price. So that would be the only way I would even think about. I'm not playing Brumfield, who I think is like 8K, with all these other quarterback options that we've got. Wyoming and Illinois. This is an interesting one. Illinois, has struggled a lot, but they love to run the football. As you can see, last year ran it 59% of the time. Wyoming ran it 64% of the time. So you can kind of see what these teams are going to try to do. Illinois is now a 14-point favorite. They were 11.5 a couple days ago. 43 total, lowest on the slate. You've got some interesting options for Illinois. The only guy that I'm thinking about playing in this entire game, though, right now is Chase Brown. We'll get into how much of a workhorse I expect him to be in a game against a bad Wyoming rush defense that I think that they can definitely take advantage when they're going to just pound the rock as many times as they can. On the other side, Wyoming, kind of a interesting. I think it's Xavier Valade left the program. Now they have Titus Swin, who was right on his heels to start last year, and they were splitting a lot of the work. Now he should be the main guy. He's 6K. Not the best matchup because they're 14-point dogs, but I think you can definitely consider that. We'll get into again position by position in a bit. Utah State, UConn. This is going to be a very fun one, I think, for GPPs. Everybody, as I said, going to be gravitating toward Western Kentucky as a 27.5-point favorite in the biggest total. But right on their heels, Utah State going up against the dreadful UConn squad, who's been just horrible for years. 26.5-point favorite, 59.5 total. So pushing up against the Western Kentucky totals and spread there. And Utah State, they love to air it out. They return quite a bit of their core guys. Some receivers are gone. We'll get into that. Passing game is where I have the most interest. But I think if you go kind of full on stack that squad, I think you're going to be a little different. They're definitely going to have some ownership. But maybe as your secondary stack, Bonner, back for them, I think is very big. And I think they have a big day today. Yeah, UConn still does play football. That is very funny because they shouldn't. I'm pretty sure they skipped the COVID year or 2020. I think they canceled their season, and they came back last year, was dreadful again. They should have just canceled the program at that point. But, and then the last game, 5 o'clock this evening, you've got Florida State, could be the late hammer. 43-point favorites, 55 total. So they're projecting 49 points for Florida State. Duquesne 6. So this is going to be one of those that we especially are worried about. How much will the starters play? In college, it's one of those things that they're going to leave people in probably into the third quarter, no matter the score, and especially in this first game. Do that. And you never know. Florida State has had a history of playing down the competition. They could definitely keep this close going into the second half or something crazy, and then just smash. So there's definitely some plays I'm interested in for Florida State. But let's touch on, do you have anything to add there?
Strategy questions for you.
Yeah.
So first of all, like you said, this is a bit of a tough slate to start the year. We've got huge favorites. We've got 4 games that are minus 20 or greater in terms of the spread. So I guess, do you first of all go in and say maybe look at that FSU game? Let's start with cash game strategy and maybe avoid that minus 43 favorite for cash games, just in terms of possibly they're probably going to play the least, the highest chance of a blowout here. Do you maybe fade that one for cash games, and then maybe look at, like you said, your Western Kentucky and your Utah State as kind of your 2 core teams for cash? Is that kind of the way you're looking at this? Because there's a lot of big favorites, so you can't avoid them all.
I think, with these massive favorites in college football, they're going to score tons of points when the starters are in. So I don't think I can cross them off just because of how big of a favorite they are. In Florida State's cases, we with that overall thought, we want to take it team by team and how they set up. Well, Florida State, their passing game is not very good, but their quarterback can definitely run the football. So that, I think, makes him probably the top cash game option today, just with
Okay.
that rushing upside. Jordan Travis, I think, is very viable. He should get, like I said, into definitely 3/4 of the work, and there you would expect them to have put up, maybe 5 or 6 touchdowns by that point.
Right.
And with what he can do on the ground, you can see 530 rush yards, 7 TDs on the year last year for them. And
High
I
floor.
definitely think he's got to be the top cash game quarterback option just because of that safety. The other
Second
guys,
in
though,
pricing.
yeah, second, yeah. Reed and Bonner, I think, they have the passing game upside in that they're going to throw it a ton.
Yeah.
Both of those guys are going to just have massive volume in the passing game. So I think, cash game wise for quarterback, I think you're going Travis and then one of those two. Because I think there's enough value that you can do that. We'll get into probably the lock of the slate at running back here in just a bit. But I think at quarterback, you're definitely going two of those guys in GPPs as well. Two of those three is what I'm going to try to get to. Casey Thompson, though, right below him at 7,200, gives you a little salary relief if you need to. Like I said, there's a guy or two we can pair him with if you think he comes in and they play. Definitely more of a GPP look, though, with the lower spread, lower total. He's got 31 implied points for Nebraska. And you look at all those teams above him, with Reed, Travis, and Bonner are in the high to mid 40s in projected points. So I think Casey Thompson's got to be a GPP play, but he definitely has some rushing upside as well. We saw it at Texas some last year. Not a ton, but 4 touchdowns. Rushing 157 yards. Can definitely get it done on the ground. The only other quarterback, that I would say is in cash game consideration is if he starts and you want that salary relief to go all the way down to Harrison Bailey at 4,500. I think you could definitely do that. Right now, I have projections have him at 16. That's obviously projecting that he starts, and it's because they are such a big favorite. He is not one of my favorite plays on the slate by any means, but I think you could definitely go there if you need that salary relief. I just don't know that we need it at the quarterback position, and the opportunity cost of giving up Reed, Travis, or Bonner or Thompson is pretty big on this slate.
Just looking at Eric's comment here, I'd have to agree with the across the pond games, both scary in college football and NFL. And I kind of posted in chat here that I would have to agree. Probably even more so with college football, just simply because they don't, with NFL, they're doing it so much now. It's kind of become a regular thing where a lot of these guys have experience traveling across, and even, a lot of them are very, very wealthy and make trips across anyway. They're doing that. And they're, I would say, better athletes in total. And these young kids, some of them, probably a lot of them have never, traveled outside the United States. So there's probably even more risk, I would think, in college football than NFL. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of unknown because to my knowledge, I haven't seen this in the last few years, certainly.
Right.
So there's definitely a lot of unknown there. I did read some reports, fan wise, that Nebraska was actually traveling pretty well, which, that's interesting to me that these college fans are willing to travel across seas.
Yeah.
Watch Nebraska but is what it is. I'm sure they made a lot more out of it, but than just watching them play. But it's going to be a lot of unknowns today, especially in that game. Only other quarterback I want to mention is Taquan Roberson for UConn, transferred over from Georgia. He is going to get the start. I posted that in chat. I'm not sure that the link copied over correctly, but that tweet is that Roberson will start for UConn, should be behind and throwing a lot, but he also has a little bit of rushing ability. So we'll see. With that, I think if you were doing like 150 lineups, you might could get to him in a game stack situation where you're saying, all right, UConn can score a little bit, keep it close, and then Utah State with Bonner can just throw tons and tons. But that's pretty much all I have for the quarterback position. I think to sum it up, it's one of those days where you want and you can pay up for two of those guys of the four. And if you're new to college football, with the super flex is almost always quarterback for me. Just so much upside with these guys with the rushing ability in college just seems to have a lot more just because of the schemes and the volume and the passing amount that they throw is so much compared to NFL. It's almost always a two quarterback slate for me, and this is definitely no different. This is, exactly what you're looking for in a two quarterback slate when you have four options that are very, very good ones.
So before you move on from quarterback, I have a question about ownership because I'm looking at this slate and how I used to build college football. I didn't get to play last year, but I used to play quite a bit in years past before I started getting into we're doing 13 sports sheets now. So I've been very busy. So I kind of had to let go of some sports in terms of playing them. But I'm getting back into college football this year for sure. It's one that I'm definitely going to be targeting a lot. So just from me building, as I'm going to call myself a complete newbie here again, learning it from you all over again. I like your calls with double pay up. Do you think with Casey Thompson being only 7,200 and allows you to, load up a little bit more on your wide receiver and running backs, do you think the chalk build is going to be, say, Jordan Travis and Casey Thompson, and that going with two expensive quarterbacks like you talked about being a good strategy because there is a lot of value on this slate? Do you think that's going to be maybe a little bit lower owned of an option?
Maybe a little bit. I think actually Reed will be the highest
Top guy.
because of the total, the volume that team is going to pass with. I think he is definitely going to be the top owned guy, and I think it's going to be close with Travis and Bonner right behind him, and Thompson. I think they're all going to be very, very similar in ownership. So I think just make sure your builds have good correlation in them. Because I'm not worried about ownership at all in this. I think all those four guys are going to be fairly high owned, but there's the rest of the bunch is just so bad compared to them, as in my eyes. So I'm not worried about ownership, but I definitely think I was playing around with a little bit of builds. Reed Thompson is definitely easy to fit. So.
Right on.
People could gravitate towards that.
Love it.
So moving on to running back, little more, I think, of a condensed player pool, as far as what I'm targeting in main lineups from what we usually have at the running back position. At the very top of pricing, Calvin Tyler for Utah State. I think he's a GPP option, but I like that passing game a lot more. And my favorite guy is going to be everybody's favorite guy, though, right below him, Chase Brown. Like I said, for Illinois, they run it a ton, passing or rushing defense in Wyoming. So I think, he's got to be the top guy for probably everybody at this point. But moving on down, I think, who are you pairing him with, and are you playing three in a lineup? You definitely can play three, but right around that 6K mark with Treshaun Ward for Florida State and Titus Swin for Wyoming. I briefly mentioned Swin earlier, who should be the workhorse for Wyoming now. Not the best, probably not the best correlation running it back on the other side with another running back, but both of those teams are going to be running a ton, as we saw, 60 and 65%. So I think they definitely can get there. And if they break through, it's going to help the other side, as well, to be able to get on the field a little quicker. too. I don't expect it to be one of those things where they just run 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, 3 yards, or
Yeah.
anything like that. I think there's potential with how bad Wyoming's rush defense is that Brown could break some, Swin could get there just because of volume and things like that. So definitely like him. But Treshaun Ward, I think, is maybe my favorite GPP option on the slate for Florida State. Very, very talented guy. Should, split the backfield with Benson there, but I think Ward has the big play ability for them. They love to run it. Like I talked about with Jordan Travis, that does extend a little more out from just him. Whereas Travis at quarterback is kind of the safer guy because he's always going to have the ball in his hands. Ward probably the more of an upside guy, and he's fairly priced at 6,100. So I think I'll be taking a lot of shots on him today. Anthony Grant should be the guy for Nebraska with Ramir Johnson splitting the work a little bit there. I think those are GPP options. I like the passing game a little more there. Evan Hull is a GPP option as well for Northwestern as a dog, though. Is the only thing that worries me, and he does have Cam Porter back in the backfield there, so they could potentially split some. Dobe is mentioning Toafili for Florida State. He's a fine option if you want the big back who could punch it in at the goal line. But today, with these massive favorites, I want the big play ability guys who Ward. I think Ward's upside's like 150 and 2 or 3 touchdowns is what I think his upside is. Toafili, I feel like he's like the 75-yard and 2 goal line touchdown guy, which that if that's what he does, yeah, that's going to take away from Ward, and that's going to take away from Benson. It's just I'm going to side with Ward and his big play ability today. You've got Josh McCray would kind of be a GPP option at 5,100 for Illinois behind Chase Brown. You could go there. He's not one of my favorites. If you think Illinois just pounds Wyoming, you could take the pivot and hope that the touchdowns come from McCray and not from Chase Brown. Moving down, probably the lock of the slate is UNLV's Aiden Robbins. He's going to get the start for them. He's number 1 on the depth chart, and he's going up against, like I mentioned before, one of the worst FCS teams there are out there. Projections have him right around 15 and 3,300 if you can lock in that kind of work. I think you got to do it. I mean, there's other values at receiver that if you want to get different, not that Robbins is going to just bust, but if you think, all right, Robbins gets me 10, you potentially could build, and I think I'm going to build 5 teams today, and I might build one and go double, higher pay up like a Ward and Brown, and then come back and go, with a value or 2 at receiver and hope they can outscore Robbins. Not that they're going to have the more safe ability like Robbins does to get you the 15 or even more. But Robbins is a great play. Probably going to have him in all or 4 or 5 lineups for me today. Tons of work against a horrid Idaho State team. And then Robert Burns is the only other guy I could fit in a game stack with Utah State. You have any more thoughts at running back?
No, I'm with you on, I'm building cash lineups today is what I'm kind of going to start with. I'm not really going to get into the GPP today. I'll run my cash in, some single entry GPPs and stuff, but I'm really with you on the Brown and Robbins. Robbins opens up so much, and the fact he's, number 1 on the depth chart, definitely there for. So
yeah, that's definitely the cash way to go. Brown and Robbins at running back, and then depending on the flex position, if we get depending on how it falls, you could definitely go one of those other running backs in your flex. I think the wide receivers there's a lot of interesting ways you can go for GPPs, and we'll go ahead and hop in there now. Let's see here. Okay, I'm on there. Malachi Corley for Western Kentucky. Let me just sort this by team because I find it a little easier to speak about each team as we go here. But I'm going to start with Western Kentucky because I think that's where everything starts on this slate. Like I said, there's 6 guys that could potentially be in play for Western Kentucky, and it's all about choosing the right ones. I've been, toying with the idea of playing 3. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to stick with just max 2 of those in my builds today, and that's just because I don't want to take away from the upside that I could get in other spots, unless you get them throwing for like 500 some yards and 6 touchdowns. I don't think 3 of them are getting there. Could potentially happen. But Corley is their top returning guy from last year. He's projected for the most, obviously. 7,600 top priced receiver. It's fairly easy to fit him in there if you want to. I actually like Jalen Hall, who transfers in. I think it's from Western Michigan. A little bit more for $1,000 savings. Will be definitely lower on than Corley. Jalen Hall, I think, has big playability as well. But, the top wide receiver option with point per dollar for them is definitely Dawood Davis. 4,800. That is just a stupid price. This guy should be like
$6K.
Right. He should be in the mid 6s or even 7. So he is way too low price for this role that he's going to be playing this year for them. So I think he is where you want to start with Western Kentucky, and then you can pair him with Jalen Hall or Corley or Simon or Madison for GPPs. And then you've got Dalvin Smith, who's 3,500, and he's one of those guys I'd mentioned that if you didn't want to play Robbins, you could come here, or you could play them both certainly together. But if you wanted to just, and that would help you out with the double pay up at quarterback. But Dalvin Smith is going to be one of those big play guys for them too in this offense. So, and I think he gets plenty of work here today. So 3,500 is just too underpriced for him too. But the way I rank those would be Davis, Hall, Corley, Smith, and then Simon and Madison are kind of interchangeable.
I just looking at this from a statistical standpoint, Dawood Davis here being underpriced. You compare it to FanDuel. FanDuel's got him at 7,800 as the second highest receiver on the team versus what is he, like 6th most expensive on DraftKings. And then going over and looking at the stats, not only can he stretch the field 17.7 yards per reception last year, he also scored 8 touchdowns. So he's kind of double dipping on both of those right there as well. He can score the touchdowns, and he can be a deep play, huge upside guy as well. So yeah, I agree with that. He's underpriced, and I think that's where I'm going to start in my cash games, pairing him with Reed.
Yeah,
probably get Hall in there too at 66.
Yeah, this is what I ran into when I was like, man, I like 3 of these guys, but can they actually get there? And it was almost like a thing where there's other top receivers, on the slate. So can I really justify playing 3? Maybe I do make one of my 5 teams with 3 of them, just in case they throw for like 500 or 600 yards and tons of touchdowns, which is definitely possible. So I might make one of my 3 with like a Hall, Davis, and Smith or something like that because of how cheap Smith is as well. I don't think I would play 3 of the top guys like Corley, Hall, and Davis. I mean, they definitely could get there though. But there's just some other receivers I want to
get exposure to.
One I want to talk about, and this is on the flip side of that game that I think is a reason that a lot of people are going to gravitate toward Western Kentucky, is because you can run it back, and this is not a necessary thing to be able to have to run it back in college football, certainly in these massive blowout situations. But Austin P is projected for a little under 3 touchdowns, 18.5 points. So that's not nothing. And Dre Mcrae, I don't have his stats in here because they're FCS, but if you look back to last year and what he did, I feel like his maybe his stats are on DK on the game logs. Let me pull it up.
I'm bringing up College Football Reference too. I had it up, but then I deleted it.
I'm just gonna see here. Let me.
You gotta love the name too. You gotta get some Dre. It's all about Dre.
Yeah. So McCrae in the games late in the year, he had a game week 12 last year, 7 catches, 237, and 4 touchdowns last year. Again, I think that's Tennessee Tech. He had also another game, 6 for 137 and 2. This guy is going to get peppered with targets on this team, and they're going to be throwing it a ton. 4,700 is probably too underpriced for him, and it's just because they have such a big 4-touchdown underdog. But McCrae is definitely a guy that I'm interested in for Austin Peay. I mean, he's like could go in my main lineup type thing as a run back to 2 of those Western Kentucky receivers. James Burns is the other guy, 3,100. Could take a shot on him, but he's going to be one of those. If I was making like 20 or 150 teams, I would get to Burns, but I don't think that I'm going to get to him in this game. I might actually, if I decide to just stack Western Kentucky in every lineup, at least on one side, I might switch McCrae to Burns on one of those or something like that. But I definitely think that's an interesting run back. I would wish that McCrae would come in a little lower owned, but I don't think he will. I think just the volume and the fact that everybody's playing Western Kentucky and they like having run backs, I think he'll get some ownership. But don't be scared to play this guy, even though he's FCS school. I think he can definitely get it done.
10 to 15 targets, you think?
I think he has around 10. Yeah.
Nice.
Could be more if they just start chucking.
Yep.
And the guy who they're starting, I think we had some news. Yeah. So the guy they're starting at quarterback is Mike DeLilio. I think is how you say it. He transferred from Middle Tennessee State.
Dane kind
so
of paused out
I have
there.
no idea what to expect.
Yeah. So my build right now, going with that, I paired Reed with Davis. Obviously, we talked about before. You get McCrae in there at 4,700. At running back, I talked about Robbins and Chase Brown together. Still leaving 5,850 for my final wide receiver slot, and then my flex, which probably just because of what Dane has been talking about in terms of passing game, probably going to end up finding a wide receiver. So he was just about to break some news, and then he kind of went out there. I'm not even sure what he was going to.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. You're back.
Okay. What I was talking about was the quarterback for Austin Peay. Is Mike DeLilio, I think is how you say it. He transferred over from Middle Tennessee State, and I don't know what to expect at all out of him. But at least we've got a little clarity and know he came from a FBS school. So that's at least something to look at. Moving on at receiver. So Florida State at receiver is where it gets tough for them. And looking at, cash game options, if you're playing Travis, I think you want to play him naked without any receivers because Micah Pittman came over from Oregon. 7,500 is just a dumb price for him. This guy was right on the – I mean, he was like $3K all year for 2 years, I feel like, and never hardly did anything. Now he comes over to a team that loves to run it, and their quarterback's not the best thrower in the world, and he's priced 7,500. No thanks for me. McLean, I'm not going to go there. But my favorite receivers, if you want to go for GPPs, not cash game options, but Antrea Wilson and Johnny Wilson. Johnny Wilson transferred over, I think it was Arizona State this year. I think he's a big play type guy. I think you could definitely go there. Cameron McDonald, if he's in, you could potentially take a shot on him, the tight end. All GPP options for Florida State, though, not at the receiver position. Nothing that I'm dying to play. Idaho State, Jalen Johnson is a transfer, 3K, should be a little higher priced. I think you could potentially go there if you were building 20 teams, but I'm not going to get there by any means. Illinois, like I said, they love to run it. Isaiah Williams would be their main guy. If you want to play him in GPPs, you can go there and hope that he steals some of the Chase Brown production. I don't think you play both of those together. Or if you want to take the cheap option with Illinois, you could go Brian Hightower, who transferred over from Arizona. So you could definitely take a shot on them. Not probably anything I'm getting to in my 5 lineups either. Nebraska. Now this is where it gets interesting. You can use these as a pair with Casey Thompson or by themselves if you're not playing Thompson. But Trey Palmer transferred over from LSU, was a pretty big recruit for them. 6,200 I think is too low price for what he's going to mean to this offense. He's definitely going to be the top guy in my eyes. So Trey Palmer, and then I mentioned earlier Marcus Washington, who transferred over from Texas with Casey Thompson. I think you can definitely go there at 3,800, a cheap combo with him. So Trey Palmer and Marcus Washington are very in play for me for Nebraska. Northwestern, I'm probably not getting here either, but Malik Washington and Bryce Kurtz could be GPP flyers. If you were building a bunch of teams for them, I would keep them in the pool. And then UNLV, like I said, we like their running game with Robbins. Can we go there with their passing game? And I mentioned earlier Harrison Bailey, if he's starting, is 4,500, and you could pair him up with Kyle Williams, who's probably one of the top talent guys on the slate. 6,300, I think you could take a shot on him. He might make one of my 5. But if I was building 20, I think it would be an interesting stack to either maybe go away from Robbins and play like Bailey and Kyle Williams, or Bailey and Ricky White, who transferred over from Michigan State, or Weimer, who is 4,400, a little cheaper. But Williams and White would definitely be the top 2 for me there. White has some big playability. So does Kyle Williams. So definitely could take a shot on one of those. Now, Utah State, kind of the last receiver team we're going to look at here. Like I mentioned earlier, Bonner, probably one of the top quarterbacks on the slate, and you have a plethora of options to pair him with. Justin McGriff is a tall target here, so I think you can take a shot on him. 6,800, he's got some big play and touchdown upside in the red zone. Brian Cobbs, I know Doe mentioned him earlier. He's underpriced, transferred over from Maryland, 6,000. He's projecting very well, and I think he's got to be one of the top also point per dollar options on the slate. I would rank this Utah State receiving core behind Western Kentucky. But like I said, this could be, where you pair them up with Western Kentucky, or you pivot away from Western Kentucky and come to Utah State. Let's see here. Xavier Williams and Kyle Van Leeuwen, we're going to say 4,200. I think are GPP options, and Nine Davis, 3,900 is another cheap receiver option if you're full stacking or running a bunch of lineups with Bonner. You can still hear me okay, right?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. You're froze on my screen. I'm like, is my internet screwing me again?
Okay. I'm
so
building.
That's where I'm at with the receiver. Let me sort this back by price. I think, team-wise, Western Kentucky's got to be the top option just because of the volume. But Utah State, very close on their heels. And I'll let you, if you have any questions about the receiver, shoot. But this is our rankings, and I'll show this on the live stream today, but this might be something, going forward that I don't really look at on the live stream with people, but is definitely available if you if you subscribe, join our Patreon, and pull up the sheet there. But I've got all quarterbacks, the top 4 there ranked. Currently made a point per dollar looking last night. Bonner, all those guys are so close. I'm going to have a mix and match of all 4 of them across my 5 lineups. That's probably the only quarterbacks I'm going to touch. And then you can see the running back rankings, Robbins, number 1 point per dollar, Chase Brown, Ward, Swin, Grant. That's not changing. That would be exactly how I still rank them. And then you've got this receiving ranks here of Davis, Hall, Palmer, Corley, McGriff, Cobbs, McCrae, Dalvin. As you can see, down through 11 guys there. So these are ranks that I like to put the cheap options in there so that you can build teams pretty much just based on all these ranks. I mean, most of my teams are going to include all players from these rankings. And then you've got stacks. Western Kentucky, number 1 for me. Utah State, then Nebraska are the 3 in the order I'm looking at today. Definitely want to come up with some ways to be a little different, I think. Because Western Kentucky and Utah State are going to be definitely the most popular teams to stack on the slate. So if we can do it a little different way, we definitely can. We can play around maybe with some builds here. I like to do that at the end of the shows. So if you have any questions, you can ask while I'm changing over to the DraftKings screen.
So what I did for my cash build was I paired quarterback and wide receiver twice. So I went Reed and Davis, took that value. And then at running back, like I said, I went Brown and Robbins, high priced and a value. And then for my super flex and other receiver, I ended up going with Thompson in cash. And I paired him with Palmer, who you had talked about. From what you had talked about there, the transfer, he was the transfer from LSU, I believe. Going to be high volume guy. I could see him getting that double digit targets too. So I wanted to get at least 2 of my 3 wide receivers that have kind of a floor of like 8 to 10 targets with upside of say 12 to 15 if possible. So I kind of put that in there. I tried to work it without Thompson at quarterback, but it ended up being who I wanted to get McGriff in there as well for Utah State. So I ended up going down to Thompson at the super flex, and that's kind of why I paired Palmer and Thompson together in that build. And I think it just got a nice mix of, I guess it would be a little bit more stars and scrubs here.
Did you say you didn't have Cobbs, right?
No.
If you wanted to maybe try to fit, you were saying you were trying to do the double pay up.
Mm-hmm.
Would dropping McGriff to Cobbs help you with that?
McGriff to Cobbs, and then that gives me
8,100.
No, it doesn't get me to Bonner or Travis.
Okay.
It's close. It was very close, and that's kind of where I went down to Thompson and then paired him with Palmer, hoping that we can get some volume out of those 2 together, at least for a floor. Because like I said, I went in like 3 or 4 cash games and then 1 single entry GPP. So I'm looking for more of a floor than the upside here. But if I can get the upside, great. But it was more of a floor for me here this week.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I've got DraftKings up. I'm gonna play around with kind of some builds I'm looking at, and maybe we can, while we're playing around, we can find a way to get different on the GPP side. But that's definitely a good cash game route that you just laid out right there, for sure. Austin Reed. Let's just try to start with the Western Kentucky stack. I think, a way to get different with that stack would be to play one of those guys I had highlighted as a GPP option in Josh Simon, who I think is their tight end. I could be wrong, but I'm almost certain Simon's the tight end. Or Madison, who could be, the difference maker. If the targets or the touchdowns go to one of those 2 guys, they could definitely fit. But let's just start out with kind of, what we're looking at with the main type guys for me here. I'm going to look at Hall and Dawood Davis are the main 2. And then let's just try to play the run back with Dre Mcrae. So that leaves the 6,200. And if we start, going to the running backs that we want, you got Chase Brown. I love Trayshawn Ward. And then we've got our cheap guy in Robbins. That leaves you 77 to 50 for 2 spots. You can definitely make any of those, I think, combos work at the very top. If you're playing like not much in that build, because we're not playing Chase Brown, obviously, in that one. We drop down to Ward. If you throw in, and I won't fill in the last spot, but if you throw in Logan Bonner, 6,900, you've got McGriff, or you can leave salary on the table and play Cobb. So that is an awesome build, I think. Definitely a nice looking
upside for sure, with some little bit of lower ownership too. It should probably not going to be a duped lineup there for sure. I like that.
I mean, Chase Brown is going to be 60% owned or more. And just dropping off of him, I think, makes sense. And then if you want to go, anybody else who would have that exact team is going to play McGriff in that last spot. And if you drop down to Cobbs, who I think has, just as much upside, you're leaving close to 1,000 on the table and have just as good a team. So I think that's an option as well. Let's see here. Or, I mean, look, you can go on with this team and play Jordan Travis for a couple hundred more. Then you don't have to pair him with anybody. You can leave 500 on the table with Trey Palmer. You can fill in with Titus Swin, who I said had the upside. And who knows, if you're fading Chase Brown on that team, you could say, all right, well, what if Wyoming pulls the upset and controls the game? Then you're kind of getting that leverage of Swin getting more work than you would have expected if Chase Brown and Illinois control the game. So I think that's an option. I have no problem playing Travis and Ward together, running back and quarterback with no receiver. I think that still makes tons of sense. Let's see here. I wanted to play around with, because you can obviously easily fit Corley in there. But Simon, who is listed as questionable, so we need to watch out for that for them. But Simon fits definitely in that build. You can easily play 3 of these guys, and it doesn't make you feel bad. That's what I kept running into last night. But let's just say we skip out on the full-on stack of Western Kentucky, and we make Utah State our primary stack. So we've got Bonner, and then we're going to want 2 of those receivers. You could definitely, probably go Cobb and McGriff. Let's see where that leaves us. 6,300 with Robbins in there as well. Let's see. Then let's just throw Chase Brown in there, who I think's, obviously the top running back option. But you could certainly free up some more salary and go the other way. So then this type of build is where it may get a little tough to fully, go double pay up quarterback. 5,800 left, but let's just see here. If we're not going to full stack Western Kentucky, it might make sense to go ahead and pay down for a cheaper receiver for them in a Dalvin Smith. Just because, he's 3,500. What if Western Kentucky doesn't fully get there, but he definitely pays off his 3,500? I think you do want a piece of Western Kentucky in every team you make today. That leaves you 6,950. So still going to make it pretty tough to pay up for another quarterback. Let's just, for example, if we play Jordan Travis on this team, it leaves us 5,100. Actually, it's not that hard at all, is it? Because you can pair him with Wilson. You can play Daywood Davis, who's, like I have, is ranked as the top receiver option on the slate. You got Dre Mcrae if you just want to throw back the other side. I think double pay up quarterback is so easy today with the value that we've got. So, who knows? Maybe that could end up being the flip side of what you said earlier of, is it going to be hard, or is it going to be popular to drop down to Casey Thompson? It might make Casey Thompson a little lower owned if everybody just starts building and they feel it's so easy just to get 2 of those top guys. And you can definitely make a Casey Thompson stack work with the receiving options that he's got that we've already talked about.
I agree.
So if there's no other questions, we will hop off here. We've been on almost an hour. Feel like we covered a lot of the slate, spreads, position by position, stacks, little building tips there.
So happy to be back.
Yeah, very happy to have football back. I know somebody mentioned earlier about NASCAR. I think we're definitely planning on trying to hop back into the NASCAR shows.
I might even do one today.
Whoa.
I've been waiting for a phone call to see if I have to go back and sit in the combine today, and I don't think it's going to happen because there might be some rain where I was supposed to be. It's like an hour north of where I live here. So it doesn't sound like I might be going back. I think we got locked at 10 p.m. Eastern. Whether that is going to be when the race starts or not. But I'm just going through and actually doing my core plays and rankings right now on the NASCAR sheet. Always like talking super speedways. It's a race that I like talking about in terms of strategy. I mean, the strategy is place differential, but still, we had rained out qualifying and stuff, so it kind of makes the builds very interesting. So I think I might jump on here this afternoon. Just kind of waiting on one final phone call, but I will announce that in chat as well. And then coming up, I would like to do it for playoffs. And if I can't do a live show on Sundays just because of work schedule and stuff like that, what I might do is put together a preview show that I can kind of do days in advance when I find, a couple hours to put that together for you guys. And if there's not a preview show, there'll be a live show kind of for the final 10 races of the season. And then getting into NFL, I think something I'm trying to put together is maybe a quick 30, 40-minute live show Sunday morning, to talk about some of the incoming news for the day, some cash builds, some core plays, the general stuff that we talk about on our live shows. So if you guys are interested in the NFL shows, now I know everyone's interested in the NASCAR shows. I've got a ton of messages asking, what happened to the live shows? Are you bringing them back? So I really want to get into the NASCAR, but if you guys are interested in NFL too, discussing some stuff in the mornings on Sundays, definitely hit me up in chat and I will try and put that together for you. But stay tuned for the NASCAR. I will announce that in the all members chat, and I'll put a post on social media as well if I can get to a show talking about some Daytona today.
I like it. And before we hop off, I do want to touch on one game in the late slate. As you can see, we've got the sheet up, and one of these is included on the FanDuel slate. And we got a question from Texas Frog in the Discord chat that I think he meant for the live show. So talking about the Charlotte, Florida Atlantic game, which is included on the FanDuel slate. And are there any options that we want to touch on from that? And I think there definitely are some FanDuel plays that we can get to because that is the premier game, total wise in the night slate as well, which I'll have highlights up for that later on. We're going to be covering all the college football slates, the main slate, the night slate, and the late night slate. A lot of places out there don't touch the late night slate, but we've been at that for a few years now. And we always have some fun with that later on in the evening. But to touch on it, and this could be an old spread because I've not updated. Let's see here. See if I can get that up quick. Florida Atlantic was a 7-point favorite is what I had at a 60 total. We'll double check what that is. But I think, Charlotte is the interesting side for me in this game. Let's see here. Let me get over to the quarterback page. Chris Reynolds, top price here. He's $8,600. I'm not exactly sure where that falls for the main slate on FanDuel. But he has massive volume, as we've seen in the past, is going to throw it 35, 40 times, and has a lot of receiving options that we can go to as well. So I think you can definitely get to him. Makes a lot of sense on the all-day FanDuel slate. Could just mix him in with these other top quarterbacks. Like I said, I'd have to see where he falls in exactly in the pricing. I don't play a lot of FanDuel, but definitely wanted to touch on it since we had a question. Let's see. Johnny Ford on the other side of that game, I think, is an interesting play, 8,300. Definitely a GPP option for me. I like the passing game for Charlotte a little more, and Ford mixing in with all these other plays on the main slate. He would fall in a little behind some of those other guys we mentioned on the other slate. And then the receivers, Victor Tucker, Grant DeBose, I think are very, very good options. I favor Tucker. This was a team that we had some uh, plays last year, slates last year that we played, and they were pretty good. Victor Tucker is back. DeBose is back. 7,200 versus 8,700. I think you got to favor Victor Tucker there as well. I'm looking at all the pricing and trying to get the most up to date odds. Only other guy that I'll mention would be Burton for FAU. I think he would be the upside guy for them. Big playability, could bust a big one. So that's really where I'm at on that game. I think there's definitely some interesting options that you can take a shot on, though. All right. I'm going to hop off. That covers it for today. Good luck to everybody. Join us in the chat. We've got about an hour till that first game. See you all later.